Hello. My name is Christopher Brown, and I'd like to first tell you that I am an insomniac. And that's an admission and also a confession. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I have ideas in my head that I need to let out. And one of those is the fact that Jessica Fletcher, from Murder, She Wrote, killed all those people, and there is no way around that issue. How can I possibly say that? Well, about 3:05 in the morning, it did occur to me the full argument and why it exists. There's one good reason for starters. Jessica Fletcher is the best in the world detective, full stop. 269 cases she solved, minimum. And that includes the Magnum PI episode, which is awful, and 4 TV movies. It's to the point that Cabot Cove is, in actual fact, the most dangerous place on earth. And that's the Daily Mail saying that, so that must be true. And that doesn't even include the fact that in New York, perhaps, that she actually moved to New York to do more cases. Part of the reason why she's so involved and part of the reason why there are issues with her is that she's actually based on Miss Marple. And Miss Marple would normally hear something and overhear it and then get involved because she's a busybody. Sherlock Holmes would normally, somebody would arrive to him, say with Poirot, and kind of say, I've got this problem, and then to explain the issue, and then he'd go and solve it. Not Jessica Fletcher. She just rocks up, and then people start dying. So, taking Sherlock's example, when you limit anything that is impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth, even if 269 people died because of an old lady who writes books. I consider her to be the Black Widow. This is part of her backstory. She's originally obviously British, flies over to a New England town after the mysterious death of her husband, and doesn't actually explain why to anybody. And she can't write. She can't write at all. She writes on an old school typewriter, which is the kind of like typing on razor blades, and yet she keeps insisting on doing it and makes it like that's part of her shtick, even though she's so amazingly competent, apparently. That's the name of her first book. 2 things. One, it doesn't sound like it's a murder mystery at all. And a corpse can't dance at midnight. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yet suddenly millions of people are buying her books. I just don't buy it, frankly. So there must be something else at play. This is an artistic impression of Jessica Fletcher watching you masturbate. She's a liar, frankly. She's the only character in the history of mankind who can fly a plane but can't drive a car. Not only that, the extended universe is really weird. For example, this book, all the books that she writes are actually co-written by the fictional character. And I just feel really sorry for the people who write these books and then have to share credit with somebody who doesn't exist. But what it does make me think is perhaps the motive is interesting. Maybe she's an unreliable narrator in the TV series. After all, it's Murder, She Wrote and not Murder, She Solved. So maybe she's like telling the story through her own eyes. Now, that makes sense when you consider the fact that every man over 50 falls at her feet and falls in love with her. And not only that, that for some reason, no one imagines that somebody who's solved 270 cases might be involved over a 10-year period. And ultimately, she's surrounded by incompetence. For example, Mr. Cunningham from Happy Days was ran ragged by Fonz. And let's be honest with you, he was a drug dealer who lived in a garage. And then when he's not in the frame, there's somebody else as well. It's Gomez Adams, and he pulls that face for every episode that he's in it. And let's be honest with you, Gomez Adams is the type of gentleman who, A, is obsessed with his wife speaking French, and B, loves death. So surely he'd be on it as well. Now, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I checked this on a blog and tried to work out if it was possible. Now, there's an idea called Occam's razor from the 14th century. And basically, the idea is initially that you can't necessarily do something unless it's like, well, actually should not be multiplied. Basically, it means if there's 2 ideas, one's more complicated than the other, and they come with the same outcome, go for the one that's easy. And in this case, almost certainly, we can use this with Jessica Fletcher. So there's 2 options. One is she's a perfectly acceptable, normal person who happens to have solved 270 murder cases in a 10-year period and write books about them. Or there's a second, more sinister option. There's a chance that maybe she's killed those people, done it to make money from the books, and then from there on in is trying to make a living out of death and can't stop. She moved to New York and more people died, and I don't know where this is going to end. And frankly, it's no wonder I can't sleep. Thank you.